My name is Olivier, and I have two things I would like to share with you about myself. The very first thing is that I'm absolutely fascinated about you. Not just you too, all of you. Because on a daily basis, my job is to study brains and behavior and to try and understand how people like things, why they like other people, why they talk to each other, how desires emerge, how preferences emerge, how do we make these kinds of decisions, and ultimately, how we are and why we are what we are. But you might have read in my bio that I am a professor at university. I entertain the idea to be a little bit different than a lot of my colleagues. Why? Because I try to get out of the ivory tower that are scientific lives in order to look at real life, real people, living lives with real constraints, not just scientific experiments. This is why, over the past 20 years, I've worked in academia, but also in the private sector, with governments, NGOs, in order to try to develop better strategies to improve the lives and well-being of people in their real lives. Speaking of real life, there is another thing I would like to share with you. I am the proud father of two wonderful little daughters. And like a lot of men, when they become fathers of girls, you instantly, and I instantly became a feminist. And I started to worry. I think when you become a father, the first thing you learn is what real worry means. And I said, how can I help them? And I said, okay, you study people, the world. Maybe you could try to understand the world in which they are going to grow, in which they are going to live. And this is why I started to combine psychology, behavioral economics, anthropology, neuroscience, in order to have a better grasp on what makes us who we are. And in some of my most recent research, I went around the world. I went to India, to China, to the US, to the UK, conducted surveys online on thousands of people, interviewing people, meeting people, but also observing what they do, recording where they look, recording their emotional reactions, and also analyzing what is going on in their brains, in order to understand why we make choices that are not only bad for ourselves, but most of the time bad for the others and the planet. The work I did around the world was coined Engaging Tomorrow's Consumer. We tried to understand how to engage people for them to make better choices, to make what people in boardrooms call sustainable consumption. And we were focusing on one segment of a population that is kind of the obsession of most institutions, public and private, brands, companies. They are called the millennials. So I guess you heard about the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and Z. The millennials, all those individuals that were born between 1980 and 2000. This is quite a broad range. But nowadays, these millennials are one of the main targets of politicians, brands, marketing, and education. Understanding the millennials, tracking the millennials, is really one of the main goals of these people, of a lot of people in charge. But the first thing we identified in the research that I conducted is that 20 years is way too much to talk about a generation. In the world in which we live, with a scientific, technological, and social revolution we're witnessing every day, with the biggest uncertainty about tomorrow, with the biggest volatility about preferences, loyalty, etc., that we've ever experienced in human history. Looking at a group of individuals that can be 20 years apart and telling things like millennials love this or millennials love that. Doesn't work. So as the father of his two wonderful daughters, I decided to look at a particular segment, the younger segment, those individuals born between 1995 and 2000. We call them Generation K. Generation K is growing, evolving, experiencing a very strange world. Generation K is generation anxiety. Think about 9/11, all the natural and non-natural catastrophes that this Generation K is experiencing. Think about terrorism. A lot of them are absolutely concerned, deep, deep fear about what tomorrow can be in terms of everything that is going on. And the reason why we call them Generation K is after Katniss Everdeen, the main character of Hunger Games franchise. For those of you who don't know, it's a very, very popular and successful movie franchise that is as popular as Harry Potter. Katniss is a very fascinating character. She lives in a dangerous world where everyone has to try to survive, with everyone watching others, experiencing the new circus games like in the antique Rome, watching things on TV, trying to survive. Yet Katniss is a leader, a true leader. So this is why we call them Generation K, because just like Katniss, they experience a world full of uncertainty, full of dangers. And when I say danger, I'm not only speaking about the physical danger of a natural catastrophe and terrorism. We're talking about the first generation that, for more than 70% of them, these teenagers, they're concerned about their future debt. 70% of Generation K is worrying about being indebted in the future. Do we really want our teenagers to think this way? One of the reasons why Generation K is resonating so much with so many parents, so many institutions, is because there is a huge question mark as to how we can communicate with them, how we can understand them. Because a lot of the people in charge at the moment are so old in comparison to Generation K, have not experienced the same thing, that they barely understand them. Think about people like myself. I belong to a generation that was craving the release of a vinyl record. We were craving for it. We were waiting anxiously and dropping the needle on the turntable, listening to the entire album without skipping tracks, discussing about the album afterwards. My generation enjoyed the pleasure of waiting, which is something this generation is no longer experiencing, thanks or because of the technological revolution, having everything on demand. Whether this is a good or a bad thing is not to be discussed here. My point is that in communicating with them, we might fail. And when I say we, it's mostly those people in charge. Think about the recent polls and surveys that were supposed to predict the outcome of elections in Europe, France, the UK. Most of them failed. We know polls have failed, totally flawed, biased. Yet, the extent to which they failed recently is also a revelator of our problems in communicating, in asking questions, in understanding them. And this is why, in order to understand a new generation, I developed new tools based on anthropology, psychology, complex systems, and neuroscience that allow to measure one thing: the gap between what people say or think they do and what they really do in their real lives. Let me give you an example. For this experiment I was running around the world, we gave some people a list of products to buy in a supermarket. This list was coined sustainable products, because everyone talks about sustainability, protecting the environment, sustainability. So they had to pick some drinks, they had to pick some meat, etc. And one of the person that participated in the experiment came back with a big meatloaf wrapped in plastic. The thing looked horrible and totally artificial. So in debriefing, I asked the person, why did you pick this as a sustainable product. What did you look at? And first, the person told me, I looked at the tag, I looked at what was written on it. But my participant was wearing glasses that were recording where he was looking. And I realized that what he was saying and what he really looked at were two different things. He wasn't aware of it. Then I asked, do you care about the environment? Yeah, of course I care about the environment. But look, this doesn't look like something that is sustainable. He said, yeah, it's sustainable. Look at it. It's wrapped in plastic. In several months, it will look exactly the same. We lost the ability to communicate. And generally, people in charge put it on the other people when they say we can't understand them. They don't understand us. People in charge have to make an effort, have to use our new methodology in order to understand what goes on in their brains, in their interaction with the world. So yes, today, this generation, they are living in anxiety, they are living in fear, but also our results on thousands of them reveal that they are compassionate, that they care about the other, that they want to help people. And you know what? Compared to my generation and other generation before, they have a power to do so. Thanks to the technological revolution, that same revolution that prevents them to wait when a new album comes out. It also allows them to be powerful, to change things. When you look at Time Magazine's list of influential teens in 2014, you can see a young lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize. You can see 3 young ladies in Ireland who did chemistry and might help solve the global food crisis. You see another person that is super young and that led the protests in Hong Kong. Thanks to the technological revolution and their ability to care and to be compassionate, Generation K can make a difference. In order to do so, we can help them by using new methodologies to understand this new generation. And maybe, I say maybe, as the father of his 2 wonderful daughters, thanks to the insights from behavioral and brain sciences and better understanding Generation K, I can help them and guide them through the future that is ahead of them, a future that might be full of anxiety, full of fear, full of debts, but beyond all, full of love and compassion. I thank you very much for your attention.